Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Boy, I was worried there for a while. I was so afraid that everything was going to fall apart. I thought for sure Spain was done for, and that it might spill over into a global geopolitical crisis. But it's been averted, and for that I'm grateful. We'll tell you all about that tonight. And at the same time, Donald Trump continues his steady decline. Cracks in the MAGA base forming while Canada ditches the Trumpster on several different levels as he continues to lose bigly. Always lying about it. He wants you to think otherwise, but the numbers don't lie. And the people aren't pulling punches anymore. It's all falling apart. Bit by bit, he's sliding downhill. We'll dig into it, and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about on the other side of this.
Blah, blah, blah.
Blah, blah, blah.
Blah, 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 blah.
Blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah.
Blah, 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 blah.
Blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah.
Maverick News. No blah, blah, blah.
Let's begin talking tonight by talking about what's going on with Iran. We have to start there because that is the most volatile situation today. Khamenei laid to rest after days, about a week of protests and mourning, public displays of mourning, millions of people in the streets, and that was the case again today. Here, let's bring up the video, show you the size of the crowd. This is not AI. As far as I know, this is real.
بر پیکر او کنون بخوانیم همه الصلاة اقامه نماز بر پیکر ولی امر مسلمین جهان قائد عظیم الشأن مجاهد شهید حضرت آیت الله بر پیکر او کنون بخوانیم همه الصلاة اقامه نماز بر پیکر ولی امر مسلمین.
And this coming after 2 straight nights of heavy bombardment of Iran by U.S. forces. It doesn't look right now like a third night of aerial attacks on Iran is happening, but Iran has been hitting back. There has been, we have received reports of Iran striking targets in the Gulf, not necessarily American targets, though. Some of this is still shrouded in fog, the fog of war. This is video here just being released as we speak. Smoke rising from an Iranian port after the U.S. launched a new wave of strikes on targets inside Iran. Strikes come after U.S. Central Command said it targeted Iran in response to attacks on commercial vessels transiting the Strait of Hormuz. This is just recently posted, but this video, as far as I can tell, is actually from either yesterday or the day before. I'll run it just to show you what has been going on. And it is hard to know what's real, what's fake. And there's so much fake stuff out there that, and recycled footage too. But it looks like Iran is targeting U.S. bases in Qatar, Kuwait. Looks like Bahrain has been hit. And conflicting reports of Bahrain being involved in strikes against Iran. As I highlighted last night, there were reports that Bahrain was engaging in strikes against Iran, and then there were credible reports coming out saying that those were not accurate. And tonight, there still seems to be some conflict there. So give it some time, and I guess we'll find out what is really happening. We know, too, that the U.S. is saying that talks with Iran are continuing despite this tit-for-tat back and forth that has been going on between Iran and the United States and the Gulf. These latest rounds of attacks on Iran, it does not look like Israel has been involved. More footage here of the funeral procession for Ali Khamenei. Hang on, we'll get you the video. this is from Al Jazeera, and they're saying this is actually an Iraq, but I think that's probably wrong. I think they meant to put Iran on the caption. They put Iraq. Is that right? Maybe that's the point. Hang on, that's just a fresh video that I just sent to. So again, it's just so hard to keep up, and I don't have the capacity. I don't know if anybody does to really vet all of this stuff properly before running. A lot of it. In fact, I showed you last night that even the president seemed to get duped and ran a fake image, which appeared to be a screenshot from a video, which was AI generated, all related to the war. U.S. Central Command releasing some video right tonight, though, from the attacks overnight, last night's attacks. Fresh video. Now, unclassified, released for public consumption. I'll show you what they're putting out. Here you go.
Overnight, U.S. airstrikes knock out a maritime control tower in southern Iran, and a burst of orange dots the horizon. In total, U.S. Central Command says it struck roughly 90 targets across Iran last night, targeting military assets to, quote, further degrade Iran's ability to attack commercial shipping, an uptick from the 80 targets that were hit the night before. By day, Iran's coast billowed with plumes of fire off the water, boats set ablaze. In retaliation, Iran fired volleys across the Gulf, targeting American military sites. Air raid sirens echoed over Kuwait City. A missile with a message, quote, to the memory of the clenched fist of the martyred leader. Another violent night and a second cycle of bombing, pulling at the seams of a ceasefire already threadbare.
We just hit them very hard.
And last night aboard Air Force One, little appetite for diplomacy.
I say we hit them 20-1. Every time they hit us, we're going to hit them 20.
In turn, Iran made threats of its own. Parliamentary leader Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf warned on social media, quote, America still hasn't learned that bullying and breaking promises are no longer cost-free. Let me put it plainly, if you strike, you'll get hit. The return to open hostilities follows Iran striking 3 commercial oil tankers in the Strait of Hormuz, spurring this week's round of wide-scale U.S. strikes against the Islamic Republic. That fighting, the UN said today, is trapping over 6,000 sailors in the partially blocked waterway. As the passage remains perilous, some of the remaining ships transiting go dark, turning off their signal before navigating.
In Afghanistan and Iraq, we had boots on the ground, which really becomes a great differentiator. Are we willing to take that risk here?
Retired Vice Admiral Robert Harward was the deputy commander of CENTCOM from 2012 to 2014. He's now a senior fellow at the Jewish Institute for National Security of America. He says sending military troops into Iran to destroy Iranian forces that threaten shipping is necessary.
If we don't know if we've completely eradicated drones and missiles from Bandar Abbas, Josk, Karg Island, anywhere else, going in, bombing it and then following it with a raid, temporary raid, to put boots on the ground to ensure we've accomplished that mission is another option available to the president. But we did it in the case of a downed pilot. I think this is a strategic and necessary requirement to do it again now, to verify and ensure they cannot threaten the straits.
The problem is you put boots on the ground, they're targets.
Alan Ayer, former negotiator for the Iranian nuclear deal under Obama, says sending U.S. troops into Iran would not enable the United States to eliminate Iran's ability to threaten shipping in the Strait of Hormuz.
Iran, at least in terms of all the assessments I've seen in open source media, has significant remaining quantities of missiles and drones these small boats that can be quickly deployed, fast attack craft. So even with boots on the ground, unless you're going to stay there, I don't think we can sufficiently degrade their ability to threaten maritime shipping in the Strait.
Meantime, on the ground in Iran, the concluding steps in a week-long march for the funeral of the late Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. The procession reached its climax today, entombing the coffin of the Islamic Republic's former leader in his hometown. His body, followed by those of his family, carried by truck. Thousands of mourners lined the streets to bid farewell and call for revenge. The final burial for the assassination that ignited the war now approaching its 5th month, as a return to all-out conflict rears its head. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Liz Lander.
Let's look at the live map. Oh, if I can. Here we go, live map showing the situation in the Strait of Hormuz tonight. With some news updates over there tonight, too. New info coming out. I don't like this map because it's always got these pop-ups all over it, but this is the best we can do at the moment. And we're seeing that there, we got rid of that. Netanyahu's office, it says here, is part of the ongoing contact between Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump. Another conversation took place this evening between the two, in which continued coordination between the countries in various sectors was determined. President Trump updated the Prime Minister on American moves in the Gulf. Netanyahu, for his part, raised the seriousness of the statements made by Erdogan and his people against the existence of the State of Israel and the need for the existence of security zones within Israel's borders. And also highlights here on the burial of Khamenei. He was buried in the Dar al-Dakir Hall. I can't pronounce that, I'm sorry. Inside the shrine of Imam Raza. And you saw the size of those crowds. I just repeat what I said last night. Trump has talked about potentially like obliterating the Iranian civilization. You're not going to wipe out that. That's been around for a really long time, and it's not going anywhere. You're not going to, you can't do that. You can bomb them all you want, and you're not going to wipe out their religion. It will survive. So he's in a tough spot now, a very tough spot. Oh yeah, the talks are continuing, but this never was a ceasefire, as you can clearly see. And then he said last night that it's not a war. This is just a struggle for control of the strait. What have we seen over the past, well, now 3 nights? The United States, 80 targets. It struck the first night of the current bombardment, which is just part of an ongoing tit-for-tat barrage of drone and missile strikes, one side against the other. And then last night, another 90 targets hit. That's 170 targets bombed. And that's not a war? That's not just not a ceasefire. That's a full-blown war. Now, you can probably understand why some people in the MAGA base are abandoning Trump. It's because he promised to not get the United States involved in these kinds of conflicts, these wars. He said, no more endless wars, not going to get involved, promised not to do this. And then he turned around and did just this. And now tonight, it looks like we have starting even last night, further escalation with more countries being drawn in because they've been attacked by Iran in response to what the United States did, who then claims that it's a preemptive strike. And you can argue back and forth, but the end result is we have a really volatile situation, a violent situation. We're in a state of war in the Middle East. It's a powder keg. It has always been a powder keg, and Trump lit the match. That's why, you've seen Tucker Carlson, for instance, I think, saying that, he's not going to support the Republicans anymore. He's basically left the Trump camp. And quite a few other influencers who have been MAGA faithful have also jumped ship. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's now in a full-blown knockdown, drag-him-out feud with Trump. Candace Owen, a bunch of them. And they're even talking now about potentially starting their own party. Tucker Carlson talking about starting a new political party. Elon Musk has talked about it. But it looks like this initiative by Carlson might actually have some legs to it, with Candace Owen talking about it. And also Kim Iverson, who is saying she would be all in on a party called, I think they're calling it the We the People Party, if I'm not mistaken. So all these guys are kind of talking about this, and I don't know how much weight to give it, but it does highlight the cracks showing in Trump's base of support. Here, I'm going to run the clip. This is not from today, but this is an ongoing, growing thing, and it shows that the decline is real.
Something's got to be done. And that's what's got to be for this new We the People Party. It has got to be where we sit down with what would be our enemy and we would say, look, we are as American can be. We want the best for this country. And what we want is to rid ourselves of all of this influence that is ensuring our government does not work for us, but instead for the big interests. And we don't want that anymore. And we're here to put a stop to it. And that has got to be the message. And I absolutely hope that Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Thomas Massey, I hope Ro Khanna joins that effort. I hope that there are members of the squad that join that effort. I hope that there are others that are just more libertarian-minded, left and right libertarians that join. I consider myself more of a leftist libertarian, I suppose. And I would definitely be supporting of this. Absolutely, 100%. Right now, obviously, the two-party system that we currently have, the uniparty system, is not working. So we need something new. And I hope these guys are successful. I can't wait to see what they come up with.
Well, we'll have to wait and see, but maybe not too long. But even as that's happening, you're seeing feuds spreading in among people who were formerly Trump supporters and ongoing Trump supporters. I think the most prominent feud right now is between Tucker Carlson and Dan Bongino. It's been a little bit weird. Bongino, of course, left his podcast to go to work as the deputy director of the FBI. Then you had these assassination attempts against Trump. And now Bongino back podcasting again after having left. And Tucker Carlson, and I think to some people, and this has been somewhat unexpected, but Carlson has come out to criticize Bongino, saying that he has been hiding information on the investigation into the Butler attempted assassination of Donald Trump. So Bongino's been taking to social media through his podcast to launch counter attacks on Tucker Carlson. These two are having a knockdown, drag him out social media cage match.
You have permission, Tucker, to put out these texts that you claim to have. The only
I guess this all stems from a series of text messages, correspondence between Bongino and Tucker Carlson. Carlson has not, to my knowledge, even tonight, released all of the text messages that he says show that Bongino has been hiding information. Or at least, but I don't know that Tucker Carlson even has all the information. So Bongino's been hitting back pretty hard over on his program. And it's fragmenting the audience, the conservative audience, further, and also fragmenting the support for Trump.
The reason I'm bringing this up this morning is this guy okay? Because yet again, he keeps claiming to have this series of texts where I told him President Trump shut down the investigation into his own attempted murder. Of course, on its face, something not even logical or reasonable. And he's brought this up again on his social media channel, which is funny because I was texting him this morning and he sent me one, which is hilarious because it says the exact opposite. Matter of fact, put that up. Here's the text he claimed to have. This is a good one. This is me texting him. I can call you sometime to explain the lack of a public press conference on the case, which I did call him and explain to him that none of the leads had materialized into any other co-conspirators in the case. That's what happened on the call. I promise on my integrity that it's nothing sinister. I thought that text was supposed to say that President told me to shut down the event. This is him sending me this. This is his evidence. Was it yesterday or something? He puts out this social media clip or something. I popped up this morning and he says, we've been destroyed and we're terrified because he's got this evidence he won't release despite me begging him to release it. And I've already shown you the texts that say the opposite, including that one. He claims that and he won't do it. So now he knows he's boxed into a corner. He knows he looks like an idiot in front of everyone. Everyone's making fun of him. He looks like a total tool. He should put his bow tie back on. And what does he do? He claims that we've been totally destroyed.
But he persists, and this is one of the comments that sparked this exchange back and forth.
Dan is working to cover up, right, the activities of the permanent government. It's just I just have never seen anyone change that much or be that afraid. I mean, it looked like he was going to have a heart attack. He was so afraid, and I'm not saying that to attack him, but I just wish I knew what happened. Dan is.
I said, while he was FBI, deputy director of the FBI, I said, it looked to me like he was very uncomfortable in the position. Obviously, he must have been because he left. And he wasn't there very long. It just looked to me like Kash Patel was so, my take, okay, and it's speculation largely, but it just looked to me like Kash Patel was so incompetent in doing the job, and Bongino had to play second fiddle to Kash Patel, and Bongino actually has policing experience and training and understands the profession. Well, Kash Patel, I don't think is qualified at all to be the FBI director, but he's straight out of Central Casting. He made a name for himself on social media. And I think that's the most important thing for Trump. But Tucker Carlson also, I think he's maybe in a bit of trouble with the conservative side of the MAGA movement, although maybe he's not in trouble. Maybe he's just regrouping, biding his time, casting his tent or pitching his tent and hoping that he is able to bring in a sizable portion of the Trump base into his political tent as he looks toward, I think, maybe even running for president, or maybe just starting. Yeah, I think running for president. I think that is the goal for him, honestly. Don't be surprised if he initiates or starts some sort of a new political party and then takes a run as an independent of some kind, or through some sort of a party formation to take a run at the White House himself. But here he is with Chris Cuomo, who was recently on his podcast, holding Tucker's feet to the fire on the issue of the Ukraine-Russia war, where Tucker clearly in Putin's camp, Cuomo pointing out much of the information that I have been pointing out for some time, and that's that basically Russia's been pushed back on its heels. Putin's in a very tough spot, and while it's still something of a stalemate on the ground, you now have Ukraine pushing Putin's buttons by striking targets deep inside Russia. Oil refineries, ports, they've destroyed the Russian Navy, even though the Ukraine doesn't have a Navy. They've done it all with drones. They're taking out transportation infrastructure, disrupting supply chains, cutting off supplies getting to troops. And they've cut off access largely, or not entirely, but 80% of the transport into and out of Crimea cut right off, and they can't get transports and things in there. They're rationing fuel, no fuel for civilians, no gasoline for civilians, military use only because they have shortages. Here he is speaking with Chris Cuomo about the situation in Russia. Well, hang on a second here. Let me have to make sure I get you the right clip. I think I lost it. No, there we are. Okay. Chris Cuomo with Tucker Carlson pushing back against Carlson and his pro-Russia, anti-Ukraine stance.
Emptying the prisons.
Russia has 100
to send the prisoners to war, making a deal. If you go to war, you get out of prison, and when you come back, if you come back, you'll be free. That's basically the deal. So, I don't think it's going so good, actually, because they blew up all the oil refineries. That's not good. Do you know how much damage that is? How long it takes to build an oil refinery? How long it's going to take to fix those oil refineries? Some of those refineries are offline until next year. They have gasoline shortages. They have huge lineups at the gas stations. This is an oil-rich country. It's one of the biggest oil producers in the world. And now they don't have enough gas for themselves, let alone for export. This is not going well, man. Just saying. Okay. Just saying.
We are the Mavericks. Welcome to the Matrix, baby. Hope you like the view. We are the Mavericks. The world is watching. We are the Mavericks.
I'm just telling you how it is, man. Like if doesn't matter if you're pro-Russia, pro-Ukraine, that's the reality. You're seeing it every single night. And then I have to just come back to what I ran last night of Zelensky sitting there at the NATO summit with Trump, responding to a question about Putin's offer to have Zelensky go to Moscow for peace talks, which if that happens, like Chris Cuomo, I don't think they let Zelensky back out. He'd probably be a dead man. So that's a non-starter. He's not going to Moscow. But the response was absolute. It was a gem. I mean, he's quick. He's witty, quick on his feet. Zelensky's like sitting there, and Trump's asked the question, and then Trump looks at Zelensky and says, well, I don't know. Maybe you would. Would you go to Moscow? And Zelensky said, Oh, I don't. I know there's a lot of Ukrainian drones there, and that just says so much in so many different ways. There's so many layers to that. It's like, you see, Donald, we do have cards to play. You see, world, we're not done. This war didn't end in 3 or 4 weeks or in a matter of days. We're now into 5 years, and now we're, Ukraine is pushing right into Russia, hitting Russian targets. And again, that's just a fact. And Zelensky highlights that. And now Trump, because of what happened at the NATO summit, Trump has given the green light to having Ukraine produce Patriot missiles in Ukraine. Another problem for Putin. Right now, Ukraine has the problem because their Patriot missiles have been depleted. And so Russian missiles have been hitting their marks because Ukraine has been unable to defend against some of those really high speed targeted missiles, but still largely effective in taking down incoming drones. But the missiles have been a problem. And now that in time will be rectified again as Ukraine will be allowed under license to produce these Patriot missiles. So there's all of that. And I just, Trump is just like, I said before, it was a mistake for Putin to go into Ukraine. He miscalculated, obviously. Now he's under severe political pressure in Russia. We've seen reports of possible plans to assassinate him, the same way that Trump has been the target of assassination attempts on the Canadian or on the U.S. side. And Trump also miscalculating in Iran. You go to war, man, and there are a lot of things that maybe you just hadn't considered. And quite often these things spiral out of control, and they never end the way that the politicians or the saber rattlers promise they will end when they begin. And I think Trump is confused on many levels. Some people thinking that he is kind of losing his grip on reality, or, maybe just too tired to function or think straight. Highlighted again at the NATO summit. And this is a clip that I alluded to last night. Didn't actually get an opportunity to run it, but I'm going to run it here tonight. And this is where he's referring to the Islamic Republic of Japan.
I told this story yesterday. We had 111 missiles shot by the Islamic Republic of Japan. They were shot at the aircraft carrier. I told this story yesterday. We had 111.
I have to wonder about this guy's got his, they follow this guy around with the nuclear football. And he can't keep his country straight. He mixed up Iceland and Greenland. Still going on about wanting to annex Greenland. That was another thing at the NATO summit that kind of went sideways. And as a result of all of this crazy stuff, and he went on about Spain and how Spain has been treating NATO unfairly, and he's got a big knot in his knickers over Spain. So he's like, cut off all trade with Spain, and we'll come back to that. But the rhetoric against Canada continues as well. But it's coming back to bite Trump on the butt. Things are not going as well as he would let on. And what am I talking about? And I'm talking about, like, yesterday, new trade stats came over Canada, which showed that Canada has actually been exporting more goods, doing more export trade to the United States than it did prior to Trump imposing tariffs on Canada. That's unexpected. In addition to that, we're seeing tonight, if I can find the clip here, Canada, Mark Carney saying that Canada is outperforming the United States in terms of jobs Here it is here. And this is actually what resulted in tonight's thumbnail. The title on the thumbnail being Ditching Trump. Look at this social media post here highlighting what Carney has been talking about. PM Carney says we're looking to double our non-U.S. exports. We're on track for that, he said, and we should move on from the U.S. Also, we're growing jobs at twice the rate of the United States. And this, in this infogram post on X, it says basically Canada is ditching Trump, which is where the headline came from. Not only that, it's costing the United States money in other ways as well. Canada going for the Saab option on surveillance aircraft. NATO also going that way. And Bombardier getting, will get the contracts to produce the planes to carry the, I guess it's the Swedish surveillance radar systems, airborne systems, to replace the aging U.S. systems. And Canada also looking, I think, to buy the Gripen rather than the F-35 fighter jets. We will here in Canada end up with some of those F-35s, which the government has committed to, and will honor those purchases, but we'll end up with a mixed fleet. It won't be all F-35s as was originally expected, so it's costing Trump in that way as well. Tonight also, on the heels of the NATO summit, Mark Carney looking to expand trade and heal wounds internationally. I think here he is in Saudi Arabia, where today he talked about normalizing, smoothing over relations after a period of stress and tension between Canada and Saudi Arabia. We'll pick up this and share it with you.
What's been going on this week? Another busy week, good week for Canada. And I'll just say a few words about what we've been building. Building defense capabilities at home, building trust and partnerships with our allies, and building new opportunities here in Saudi Arabia. On Monday in Halifax, we announced the largest defense procurement in Canadian history, and we're now in the process, beginning the process of negotiating up to 12 state-of-the-art submarines from TKMS. This is historic, not just for the new capability that we're going to deliver to Canadian submariners, but also for the speed and ambition, the efficiency and the impact of the procurement process. We received, reviewed, and selected bids in less than a year, 5 years ahead of the original schedule, and that's that's a change to process. I know it sounds wonky and boring, but it's an important change to process the defense industrial strategy in action. Lundi, nous avons choisi de produire à notre façon la capacité souveraine dont nous allons avoir besoin pour défendre nos meant that on Tuesday, for the first historique, dans de nouveaux sous-marins, évidemment, le radar trans-horizon, des brise-glaces, des avions et des capacités de cyberdéfense. The generational investments we're making in the Canadian Armed Forces meant that on Tuesday, for the first time in 40 years, nearly 40 years, Canada arrived at a NATO summit with our defense investments and capacity on a clear upward trajectory. Already hit NATO's 2% target. We're on a clear path to 5% by 2035, which is the NATO objective. We arrived in Ankara as a stronger, more capable member of the alliance. At the summit, I met with President Erdogan, where we agreed to launch negotiations on a new free trade agreement with Turkey, a trade agreement that can unlock billions in trades between our two countries. We signed new defense contracts that will grow our industrial base and jobs at home in Canada. We agreed to open negotiations to join NATO's Innovation Sub-Fund and announced that Canada will host NATO's 2027 Industry Forum, a sign of our ambition in building jobs and growth here at home. As we build our strength at home, we're also deploying it abroad. In Ankara, we announced that Canada will extend Operation Reassurance to 2031, and that's the Canadian-led brigade in Latvia. It's our largest overseas mission, and we're increasing it, deploying more personnel for a total ground presence of about 2,600. That's Canadian soldiers, joined by 15 other nations of the NATO alliance. Canada will now stand as the third framework nation of a multinational Division North alongside Latvia and Denmark, taking even greater responsibility for NATO's eastern flank. Partant du travail que nous avions commencé à Montréal au printemps, nous avons rallié de nouveaux appuis autour de la Banque de la Défense. Ajoutons à cela que notre essentiel et cela fait partie du soutien général que nous offrons et qui a fait du Canada l'un des plus importants and defense partnerships, strengthened support for Ukraine, expanded role in reinforcing NATO's eastern flank. Canada's delivering on our commitments and helping to build a stronger and more secure NATO. Here today in Jeddah, we are building partnerships with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, harnessing the ambitions of our nations to catalyze greater security, prosperity, and opportunity for both our peoples. We signed, Canadian and Saudi businesses have signed 13 new commercial agreements across education, critical minerals and mining, energy, infrastructure, security, artificial intelligence. In education, agreements to train workers in some of the kingdom's most dynamic industries, building the skills that will power its next decade of growth. In critical minerals and mining, new Canadian engineering partnerships are working on some of the most ambitious mining projects here, unlocking over $2 trillion of mineral wealth. In energy and infrastructure, Canadian expertise is supporting roads, rails, and urban development across the kingdom, along with clean building technologies that help it build sustainably. And in defense and security, new training partnerships support the kingdom's efforts to build domestic aviation and defense industry capabilities. In artificial intelligence, Canadian AI and health technology partnerships are helping to transform patient monitoring, diagnostics, and surgical care. We're aiming to conclude negotiations with Saudi Arabia for a foreign investment promotion and protection agreement by the first quarter of next year. Canada's Minister of Finance, who's here, intends to lead a delegation of Canadian pension funds and their $2 trillion of capital to visit the kingdom in coming months to identify new investment opportunities. And Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund will visit Canada in the fall, attending our Canada Investment Summit, which showcase some of our transformative projects. Canada is also announcing that we will participate in Expo 2030 here in Saudi, bringing Canadian projects, expertise, showcasing the best of Canada at what will be a landmark event. I would like to thank His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince, and the Prime Minister of Saudi Arabia for his hospitality and for our rich discussions this afternoon. Canada and Saudi Arabia have growing cooperation across key sectors, some of which I've referenced, but I also want to recognize the Kingdom's broader efforts to promote regional stability and security. So in 4 days, in 3 countries, we've worked to build our strength, to build trust with our allies, to build a new partnership with the world. In this time of uncertainty, we're choosing to act, we're choosing to build Canada strong. And with that, I look forward to your questions. Et on peut commencer avec...
Nous allons maintenant commencer les questions. Première question, first question.
Avec monsieur, pardon.
Graham.
So I wonder if they will ask about...
Prime Minister, previous government spoke about their differences with Saudi Arabia publicly in many ways. If I understand you correctly, for instance, on human rights, you can have differences and discussions behind closed doors. But you can also do everything else that you have described. Why do you think that's the way to go now, as opposed to what happened sort of 2018 in that sort of more challenging time between the two governments?
Well, I'm going to take your question more generally about our approach, as you began, if that's okay, and you can follow up if that's not sufficient. Look, we recognize a couple of things. One is that engagement is not endorsement. So engaging with the country doesn't mean that we agree with everything that a country is doing. In fact, I can't think of a country on the planet where we would agree with everything that they're doing, first point. No country is Canada, and we don't even agree with everything that's happening in Canada. Better is always possible, including for Canada. So that's the first. The second is that we recognize in a world that's more dangerous, that's more divided, a world where we need to diversify our partnerships, where we become over-reliant on a partner with whom we share many things. The United States, obviously, we share many things, and we value that partnership, but we're over-reliant, and that's been demonstrated. Canadians have very strongly recognized that, and we're looking to diversify. So we are actively engaging with key partners around the world. We are calibrating those engagements depending on alignment and depending on our interests. Part of our interests is to build our strategic capabilities. In other words, to build in areas that make Canada more resilient, stronger, more independent. And where there's complementarities, we do that. And then the last element, it's not the last element, but the last element I'll hand back, is we recognize as a government the importance of countries that are active and influential in geographies in the world and in situations in the world about which we care deeply. Canada has always cared deeply about the Middle East. Canada has since before Diefenbaker, I'm going to stretch it back, since 1948, actually, has supported a two-state solution. I'll give the example of the two countries that I've been to on this trip. Two of the most influential countries with respect to potential solutions there are Saudi Arabia and Turkey. We need to engage with these countries. We need to be speaking with them. We need to work with them. That doesn't mean that they have the key to unlock things, but not being engaged, not talking to them on level. I'm the first Prime Minister to come here in 25 years. I was the first Prime Minister to speak to President Erdogan in over a decade. Speak to him. I'll meet with him. And so it's about recognizing where we can have influence, where we can build resilience, independence, strength, Canada, calibrating appropriately, and also creating a situation and a dialogue where we can raise issues. And because we have influence and because we have partnerships, we have a greater chance of positive outcomes and positive progress in those issues. So it's probably longer than you wanted, but that's...
Last point on this for me, that again, if I hear you correctly, emphasizing those disagreements, particularly publicly, doesn't really get countries like Canada anywhere. The critics would say you are so focused on business and jobs and money that you're just looking away from those other things, and I'm assuming you would see that differently.
I definitely see that differently. I do see that lecturing countries from afar is an ineffective strategy. It's satisfying, but it's ineffective. Engagement can be effective. It doesn't mean it's always effective. It doesn't mean it's decisive, but it can be effective. We care deeply about human rights. We care deeply about self-determination for nations. We care deeply about territorial integrity of nations. We care deeply about Canadian consular cases. I addressed a Canadian consular case in Ankara 2 days ago. And because I was with the President, it was addressed favorably. If I sat in Ottawa and pointed out all the things that we might not agree with what Turkey has done or is doing or might do, I wouldn't have had that conversation. I wouldn't have had that impact. That's a small example, but it is an example of a broader point. Madame.
Si on y va plus justement.
Okay. So yeah, I just mentioned the Jamal Khashoggi case because that's the journalist who was killed in 2018, and he didn't ask about it. I think the journalist trying to be somewhat diplomatic himself. This is what he's alluding to in that line of questioning, because back in 2018, Khashoggi, who was a Saudi dissident and a Washington Post columnist, he was murdered inside the Saudi consulate in Istanbul, Turkey, killed by a 15-member Saudi team. Khashoggi's body was dismembered. His remains still haven't been found. And initially, Saudi officials denied any involvement or even that Khashoggi was dead. And then they later admitted he was killed in a fight during a botched operation to persuade him to go back to Saudi Arabia. They called it a rogue action. Finally, eventually, they acknowledged it as premeditated murder, but denied that there were high-level orders given. But through all of this, the Crown Prince himself has been widely believed to have been involved in the killing of Jamal Khashoggi. And in late 2018, the CIA concluded with high confidence that MBS ordered the assassination. And there is a declassified U.S. intelligence report that states that the Saudi Crown Prince himself approved the operation in Istanbul, Turkey, to capture and kill Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi. So now Canada's over there. Time has gone by. You've seen the Crown Prince jetting off to Washington and sitting right next to Trump in the Oval Office. And Trump was, scrutinized over that, held to account to some degree by journalists, but not as robustly or as aggressively as he probably should have been. It was a big deal in the media, top story internationally, when the killing of Khashoggi occurred. It's faded from people's memories, and I guess the Crown Prince isn't going anywhere. So, and he's, denied personally ordering the killing, but has said that he takes full responsibility as leader because it happened under his watch. Saudi Arabia has tried and convicted several lower-level operatives in a closed trial related to it, but critics are saying it's all a whitewash with no real accountability for top officials, including the Crown Prince himself. But I guess the political realities are such in the real world that maybe Carney is correct or pragmatic, realistic in his assessment that you can't just continue to go through time indefinitely, refusing to talk to leaders of other powerful, prominent countries, because you'll never get anything done. You'll never achieve anything positive if you just simply disengage. So you can assess yourself and deal with the ethics behind all of that. It's a difficult road to maneuver, especially in a time when Canada is under such intense stress and attack by the United States. All of this, again, this is the stuff that's continuing to result in cracks in the MAGA administration too, because Trump also, I don't think Trump even cares about the death of Khashoggi. I just don't think he's got the heart for that. Just back to the division on the conservative side, and here's Candace Owen, who, lover or hater, she's still one of the big voices on that side. But and I have to say, just like Tucker Carlson, who was asked by Chris Cuomo, and rightly so, and my hat goes off to him for calling Tucker Carlson out on it. Why is he allowed to go to Russia? Why has he been allowed to go to Russia multiple times? Because he's a friend of Putin. Yeah, he's carrying water for Putin, and so too is Candace Owen. She was over there at the St. Petersburg Economic Summit. I have no doubt that she too is in that camp with Tucker Carlson. And so I find it very interesting that people who are kind of all aligned, and you can see the pattern there, and how they're all friends of Russia, and they get this diplomatic treatment as journalists where others are not afforded those opportunities or privileges, if you will. But here she is talking about the rift between Bongino and Tucker Carlson.
Instructs to Tucker that if you want more information about Butler, then you need to ask Trump to tell us to release it, meaning that there was more information about Butler that Trump did not want released. Take a listen to Dan Bongino pull the Paramount Not So Tactical. Take a listen.
Here's the other text where I actually go on to further make the case. Next, to him. He said, I hope you had the chance, Tucker said, to see the piece on crooks. We received some information and are planning a detailed follow-up. Is there someone I can talk to at the FBI before we do? Thanks. I said, I saw it. And that you seem to believe that Cash and I, who are longtime personal friends with the president, are involved in some sinister cover-up is absurd. I thought he said we were covering it up. Yet in my text, leave this up, guys, I'm saying the exact opposite, Justin, am I not? It's almost like he's bullshitting you again. Is the president in on it too, I asked? He's one of the victims. He's told us repeatedly, as he said publicly, he's satisfied with the effort Cash and I put in. The president's a victim in a federal crime. And when he's ready for us to release more information about this crime, then he'll tell us. I suggest you give him a ring and tell him you want more. Let me know what he says. He's a member of the media. People call him all the time.
Okay, so if the president could be called and could be told to instruct you to release more information, then there's more information that the president is aware has not been released to the public. That's everything Tucker just said, and you don't realize that you're confirming his report by accident. Now, I am now of the position that something is very wrong with Butler. And whatever it is that is wrong with Butler, it may go a very long way in terms of explaining what is wrong with Trump, what went wrong with Trump, because we have two options here, okay? If you almost get assassinated and you do not fire the Secret Service agents that failed to protect you on that day, they moved you off the stage, but certainly failed to protect you on that day, and see somebody on the rooftop. And then beyond that, you determine that you are satisfied with the investigation and you allow lies to come out about the investigation, or lies to remain about the investigation, saying that the person who allegedly fired the shots had no social media background, and then you withhold information from the public. We only have two options to consider. The first thing is that the entire thing was
See, it's easy to criticize. It's not so easy to build or even govern, right? So Dan Bongino was always on the critics' side before Trump came back into office. Critical, criticizing government, criticizing the FBI, the CIA, all of the conspiracy stuff, and the truth stuff too, but just critical. It's easy to criticize, be a critic. But when now that he was on the government side, was in there working at the FBI as the deputy director, now he's the target. And you see these other influencers who largely, I don't think for them it would matter if it was a Democrat or a Republican, aka MAGA, Trump in the White House or in power. In general, they're pro, I think they're pro Putin. So they're going to criticize whoever gets into power. And I think some of them, I know that some of them were supporting Trump during the campaign, both campaigns, because they expected him to do exactly what he's doing, and that's cause chaos. They wanted him to win, not just because he seems to be pro-Russian, but also because they knew he would be disruptive and would actually cause a lot of damage to the United States. And I think that that is exactly what is going on. That's why even now in Canada, maybe I can find you the headline here. Canada is purchasing military vehicles, an army vehicle contract. And here's the headline. Toronto Star reporting that the United States has been excluded from bidding on the contract. Yeah. Not only is Canada not spending as much on military arms from the United States as Mark Carney said in a speech when he was coming into office. He said, "Gone are the days when Canada will spend 70 cents out of every defense dollar with the United States." And here you're seeing this is the price that the United States is paying. And it's not just Canada, it's all NATO countries. Yes, they're ramping up spending, but they're not buying all US arms. And I think that was part of the plan under the Trump administration. Maybe, I think on the surface, that's the way it looks anyway. Complain about all the NATO countries, tell them they have to spend more. Where are they going to spend those defense dollars? On arms with the United States, Lockheed Martin, all the big military industrial complex corporations. But it's not working out quite the way he planned again, because he's been attacking instead of being diplomatic. So now they won't even get to bid on that contract, I guess, and we'll see how that goes. Excuse me, as the negotiations maybe take place on the trade front, but Trump is tried to play hardball so hard that on the trade file, but now he's saying that the Canada, U.S., Mexico trade agreement will just have to be reviewed every year with Canada. He doesn't want to sign a new deal. So the deal still remains in place, the existing trade arrangement, with some caveats, like some additional tariffs here and there, but it's just resulting in a lot of uncertainty, and it's damaged the relationship between Canada and the United States. And so now Canada is pulling back, not spending as much on the U.S. side, and either are other NATO countries. This is going to have long-term consequences for the U.S. It's as I watch all of this happening, though, I have to tell you, I'm editorializing here now. I'm concerned about where all this will go as this increase in military spending occurs with NATO countries. I have to ask myself exactly why. What's the real strategy behind all of this? And if we've not learned anything, if there's one thing we should have learned from history, it's that when countries ramp up military spending in a substantial way, it can create a crisis, because spending money on arms really has no value in the long run. I think back to the lesson that we should have learned from Nazi Germany, where prior to World War II, the Nazis came to power and, of course, were prohibited under the terms of the penalties imposed on them after World War I from having a large military. So the Versailles restrictions at that time prohibited them from having a large army. They couldn't spend very much on the military. So what they did is they financed military expansion through something called MIFO bills, which was to set up basically shell companies. And then rather than use actual money, they issued these government bills. And those bills served as essentially IOUs that were government backed, so that these companies could then front the production of tanks and guns and bombs and planes and ships and everything that Germany needed to rebuild its military after World War I. And they talk a lot about this 5% of GDP going into defense spending, right? Well, in the early days of the Nazi government, they were only spending, I think, about 1% of GDP in a depressed economy on the military. But with these MIFO bills, that quickly began to ramp up, but it was all hidden. And the world was being shown, and certainly the people of Germany at that time were being sold this idea of an economic miracle that was happening, because there was this massive deficit spending that was going on with fake money that really didn't exist at all. It was just government created fake currency through these MIFO bills to produce massive amounts of arms. But you can't eat arms. You don't produce anything with tanks and planes and guns. You don't farm with it. You don't produce food. You don't produce other products. You don't produce automobiles with it. It's for defense or sometimes offense, right? I mean, it's all designed to do one thing, and that's to blow things up and kill people. Now, during the time of, as you're building the stuff, it appears you have massive economic activity, because you sort of do, but it's all deficit spending. It's just the government going deeper and deeper and deeper into debt. And Germany at the time, with this secret financing scheme that they came up with, they began to ramp up their spending, and so the amount that they were spending vis-a-vis GDP went from like about 1% to, within just a few years, to 10%. By the late 1930s, they were into like 15-20%. By 1939, and just prior to going into World War II, they were at like 25% of GDP. And then they, by that time, the whole scheme was kind of coming out, but they were doubling down on the strategy, and they just kept on spending and spending, and it was deficit spending. This is why wars happen, because what do you do with the debt that you accumulate over time, spending money on arms? Just in the last 24 hours on the U.S. side, to bring it up to equate it to what's going on today, I don't have the story here, but I saw the headline, and I understand the United States is spending about $1 trillion a year on its military. The Pentagon has a $1 trillion budget, but they still went back and asked for additional supplemental funding, which hasn't been approved. And the headline has been in the last 24 hours that the Pentagon is running out of money, and they need the supplemental funding to keep everything going. And when you talk to people on the U.S. side, including those, in the military and in the military industry over there, like, they talk about the amount of money that they spend. It's like, this is nothing and that's virtually nothing. And this isn't just about the waste. This is just about the total spend. The United States now over $30 trillion in debt. Why did Hitler ultimately go to war? Because the only way for Germany to pay off its debt was to go and take stuff from other countries. They accumulated a massive amount of debt. When they finally went into the war, do you know how much of the GDP, gross domestic product, the percentage, was devoted to military spending on the German side? Like 50% of the economy. That was the economic miracle. It wasn't just the construction of public infrastructure like the Autobahn, which certainly contributed to that. And that is an investment, because that's infrastructure and it can pay back over time, because it gives you, transportation to factories and those sorts of things. But when you're just spending money on tanks and bombs and ships and planes and guns and bullets, what do you do with that stuff? How do you put that to work so that you get a return on your investment? You have to go to war. And what's the price to be paid by humanity? Death. So that's what Germany was doing. They were expanding, right? Expanding out, taking over other countries, and then taking the wealth from that. What's Trump been doing? That's kind of been what he's been doing, right? Going into countries that are considerably weaker and taking the oil. He said he was going to do that. He talked about it even before he came into office, before with Trump 1.0. The United States financing it largely, though, with deficit spending, using the US dollar, but not hiding it. It's just all been upfront. But you can see that there's something going on in his head where he's got some sort of idea. He knows that this is a great big problem for the United States. And this is why the US is in trouble. He knows it. So he's trying to, in my view, the economics here is what's really driving a lot of this. There are always, multiple things that drive it, like the expansion or the aggression of a country that ultimately ends up going to war, as we're seeing with Iran and Venezuela, Cuba, Canada, the rhetoric against Canada and other countries. It's never just one thing, but the economics always drives it. That's one of the main catalysts that ignites the fire. That's what's, I think, largely fueling all of this stuff. But Trump, his plan, not well thought out. Oh, he's taking stuff, and I don't know, over time, and they need the energy for all this AI stuff, which is also tied into the military-industrial complex. So they're just going to suck up massive amounts of energy. You saw like how many AI data centers are being built across the United States. I showed you the map last night, and it's like just pockmarks of red all across the country. They're doing it everywhere. And the deficit just continues to grow. And so I guess that can work if you just go and take stuff from other countries by going to war. And that's why I'm a little bit worried about what I'm seeing with NATO countries, because the burden of financing all of this stuff is being shifted to countries like Canada. And while that might bring jobs here and replace jobs in the auto industry, which Trump is trying to just take from Canada by having automotive factories relocate to the United States, I wonder what will happen in the long run, because you don't feed people with bombs and bullets. Well, it comes in pretty handy if you're about to be invaded, and you certainly need this. So you need it, but it has to be handled responsibly, and it has to remain within a certain threshold. 5% is a considerable amount of money to spend on arms. And Canada has always been, a country that has been very focused on peace, and not always in lockstep with the United States, even with the Iraq War, not playing a full role, only a supporting role, not directly involved in combat over there when that happened, not involved in Vietnam. But as Trump pulls back, this is going to have serious ramifications for the U.S. economy too, because he's doing the opposite. Even though he's taking stuff from countries like Venezuela, at the same time he's pulling back, and now he's losing sales of arms to other countries. So the U.S. is no longer, they're no longer going to be the leading military power for Western nations and NATO. The United States is going to end up taking a back seat to the collective efforts of the other middle powers. And all of this is, I think, potentially very destabilizing. Not potentially, it is. It's destabilizing, and I'm worried that it might eventually lead to war as governments change their attitude toward a lot of this stuff. When they see the money, they get addicted to the money. The public gets addicted to the jobs. Oh, we'll just build a lot of bombs and bullets and planes and drones. Look at all the jobs we're creating, but where's the return on the investment? There isn't any. I mean, it's there. You need it. It's there as a protective measure, right? It's like insurance, but insurance doesn't really pay you. It's not like building a road or a factory to produce consumer goods that enhance people's lives or improve efficiency. You're not building a factory to produce medical equipment, stuff that people, pay for as consumers. And in fact, actually, I think the Nazi Germany went up even higher near, the mid stages of World War II. It was beyond 50% of GDP that they were spending, well beyond. I'd have to look up what the total was at that time, but it was over 50% of all, like, gross domestic product was all military stuff. It was all a lie. The economic miracle was a lie. Like everything else in that came out of Nazi Germany. The whole thing was just a bloody lie. The only way to make it sustainable, the economy, was to go invade other countries and take stuff, steal it. Take the land, take the factories, take the productive capacity, take the agriculture, take the crops, take it all, take the wealth to pay for the military that had been built up. Go and take it, which was, I think in some respects, from Hitler's point of view at the time, revenge for the hardships that were imposed on Germany and the demands for Germany to pay damages for World War I. Anyway, a little bit of a loose history lesson there, and I hope that that was valuable to you and maybe gives you a bit of a perspective on all of this. But I can see already that there's a shift in attitude going on, even in Canada. Case in point, Pierre Poilievre. I have to laugh, actually. Let me see if I can find you the clip here. I think this is it here. I should actually introduce this in a more accurate way. I'll say here is Pierre Hegseth with a very original idea for Canada's military. Pierre Hegseth.
We will ensure that military spending goes to enhance capabilities to protect our country and support our troops. It will enhance war fighting. It will not fund bureaucracy or defense lobbyists. And we will reinstill a warrior culture, not a woke culture.
Does this guy, I'm sorry, man. Like I want to like him, and I want to see something of substance coming from the conservative side. But can we please come up with something original that might actually resonate with voters? This is like Trump is in decline. You see what's going on with these ill-advised, terribly planned, if planned at all, wars. You see what's going on in the Middle East. You see what's going on with the oil price. And Hegseth is like a train wreck in and of himself, or maybe a nuclear disaster as Secretary of War. And now Canada, which has always prided itself on being a, at least in our minds, a peacekeeping nation. People, Canadians, I think, just generally find war distasteful. We don't much care for it. And yeah, there's a certain group of people out there that this warrior culture, warrior ethos, that kind of rhetoric will resonate with some people. You are not going to win an election with talk like that. it might appeal to a certain group, a certain portion of the conservative base, but you are not, sir. You are not going to win an election in Kanakistan with talk like that. It's straight out of Pete Hegseth's playbook. So that's Canada's, I guess, minister of the I don't know. What would be the appropriate phrase for Pierre Poilievre in that case? He wouldn't be the minister of war because he's in opposition. So he would be the shadow critic for the Department of War. I don't know. It's ridiculous. We'll restore a warrior culture, not a woke. Oh, for crying out loud, man. But you see how already it's like, it's this, it's so American. You're not going to win the election. It's not what Canadians want. It's different up here, man. He's reading the room all wrong. And just because they get a lot of views on social media posts through, their conservative influencers, doesn't mean that everybody looking actually supports what they're watching. Look what happened in the last election. He got his butt kicked. Okay, it was his to lose, and he lost. He was way out in front, and in the end, he got outmaneuvered, out-strategized, and it's because of exactly that kind of talk. It's exactly that kind of strategy. It's not going to win. You're not going to win. And to kind of on the other side, it's Carney that is ramping up all the military spending and turning Canada into, he's developing Canada's military industrial complex, isn't he? So I wonder about that. We're going to need the jobs, but I don't want the wars that might come along with it. So, let's keep a close eye on it, shall we? But in true Canadian style, this gift that Carney received along with other NATO leaders in Turkey, he turned over to the RCMP. I don't know if you've seen this story, but the reason he turned his gift over to the RCMP is because it was this. It was a gun. They all got guns from Erdogan in Turkey with ammunition, a handgun. He was asked about it today, and he said, well, what was the phrase that he said? It was something about his gift to the other NATO leaders of maple syrup was outclassed or something like that. I guess outgunned would be the appropriate term, right? Yeah, I got a gun. He turned it over to the RCMP. And he says he doesn't have a firearm license for that because whatever model of gun that is, it's not legal in Canada, apparently. And I gotta gave him a gun. Wow. Anyway. I don't know. Does that seem appropriate? I guess NATO, here, please have a gun. A gift. I guess maybe I'm pretty Canadian too. Honestly, I'm not entirely opposed to guns, but I'm not a gun guy. I'm not into them. I don't hunt. I don't need one. I don't have any particular interest in them. I know a little bit about them. I've fired guns, but I'd have no desire to own one. And again, that's an issue. I know that on the conservative side, so especially on the PPC side, so many of the candidates, they embrace this gun issue. Okay, you can do that, and that might resonate with some of the people, again, in your camp, but you are not going to win the election. in your riding. If you're running on the gun issue, not in Canada. Going to get your butt kicked. And that's a fact, Jack. Now, I said at the beginning of the broadcast, I was real worried there for a while because yesterday at the NATO summit, Trump, he went on a rant about Spain. He said that he didn't want to do anything do any more business with Spain because they're a terrible partner with NATO. And then in this news conference, while he's sitting there with Mark Rutte, the Secretary General of NATO, he just outright says, yeah, that's it. We're cutting off all trade with Spain. And then I think it was Besant. He told Besant, he said, that's it. Immediately just cut all trade with Spain because he wanted them to spend more with NATO. And I think he's got other grievances with Spain as well. The truth is, I think he just doesn't like the politics there. It's too left wing for him. The commies, and that kind of rhetoric leads to wars too. He should really ramp some of that stuff down because that's pretty inflammatory and exaggerated to some degree. There is a difference between a socialist that still believes in democracy and a communist that believes in authoritarian rule and a completely planned economy. There are shades of gray all in between, and he's no true conservative himself. He's very much he's not a free market, free enterprise kind of capitalist. He's a fascistic, corporatist, crony capitalist, and worse. But here he is talking about Spain yesterday. I was worried. Oh my God.
I didn't speak to Spain. Spain is a wasted cause. We don't want to do any trade business with Spain anymore, by the way. I'd like you to cut it off. Spain is a...
And the audio low on this, but he says, I don't want anything to do with Spain. They're a wasted cause.
I didn't speak to Spain. Spain is a wasted cause. We don't want to do any trade business with Spain anymore, by the way. I'd like you to cut it off. Spain is a terrible partner in NATO. They don't participate. They don't pay. I don't want anything to do with Spain. Cut off all trade with Spain, please.
Cut off all trade with Spain, please. Yeah, just that. That's it. Just cut off all trade right now. That's it. Just mind blowing. Don't like this, so you're just gonna. Well, he did that once before, and nothing happened. So then. I've just gotten to the point. Last night I was laughing at him because I just thought this is crap. All right. He's not going to cut off all trade with Spain. This is just bombast. This is blah, blah, blah. That's what this is, man. And sure enough, on Air Force One, the new Air Force One, by the way, later overnight, asked about this again because miraculously, he claimed a big win. No real details on it, but this is what he said about it when asked, because it's a crisis averted.
I have no idea how he's doing.
At the beginning of before the NATO summit, you spoke.
Who are you with?
Reuters. You had
not the best.
You had issues with. You said you had issues with leaders of Spain, UK.
Yeah.
Spain,
I will say I did have issues with
also
Spain,
Germany,
and I still do. But Spain came back all the way today. Spain was very generous today. I told them I'm going to stop trading.
What did Spain do there?
They made. They honored a request for lots of payment, and if they didn't, we wouldn't even talk to them. They were very bad. They behaved very badly, in my opinion. But there was great unity in that room today, the NATO room. Pretty amazing, actually. There was something very good about it. I actually wish the press was able to stay. Now, they may have been different if the press was there, but there was tremendous unity and togetherness. It was quite nice.
Well, at least there's that. But, phew, crisis averted. Big win for Trump. Wow. He cut off all the trade. to show him how tough he is, and then bam, in less than what, 12 hours, he socked it to him, baby. Crisis averted. Spain came crawling back on their hands and knees, gave him everything that he wanted. What exactly was it? Just they agreed to give us a lot of money. I suspect that the details might be more revealing. Will we ever get them? I don't know. It'll fade from memory. It's almost out of the news cycle now. But I'm just at the point where it's like I just don't take him seriously anymore. And there's these cracks forming too on the conservative side, on the Canadian front. Polyev, he's got problems, man, in his own party that are running deeper than anyone is seeing in public, but they're beginning to bubble to the surface here. I think there might be a leadership convention on the near horizon because his support is not as strong as it might appear to be. This is a rift that has developed, I think, between a woman who ran against him for the leadership defeated BC Conservative leadership candidate tells Polyev it's time to unite, not divide, after lobbyists remark. Yeah, he's got problems. So, yeah, this is Caroline Elliott, defeated BC Conservative leadership candidate. And she's urging Polyev to unite the party rather than divide it. So she put this video post out to social media today, and she responded pretty sharply to comments that Polyev made earlier in the week at the Calgary Stampede with regard to what went on in BC. And while she was congratulating the new BC Conservative leader, Carrie Lynn Findlay, Polyev called her the future premier of British Columbia and praised her, the big win against the Liberal lobbyists from out east. And a lot of people interpreted what Polyev had said online as a jab at Elliott, who came a very close second in the leadership race with 49% of the vote. And her campaign was run by the former campaign manager for Ontario Premier Doug Ford, whose Ontario Conservatives have been in a long time feud with the federal Conservatives for reasons that are not entirely apparent to me, but it's been going on for a long time. And I think a lot of it comes from the separatist groups out in Alberta, frankly, that are embedded pretty deeply within the Conservative Party federally in Canada. But Elliott, a born and raised British Columbian, longtime federal Conservative supporter, pushed back against Polyev and the comments that he made. She reminded Polyev, or should I say Pierre Hegseth, that she voted for him in his leadership race, encouraged donations to him, knocked on doors for him, defended him publicly, and then he pays her back sort of with some, I guess, abrasive comments that were to her kind of disappointing. I think we have actually the clip of her, if I can find it for you. Where'd you go there, Christine? I think it's down here. Yeah, right here. Coming up. Here, I'll show you. She posted this on X. Bring this down. Here's a social media page. I think you're up on the screen, right? Yeah, there you are. Why can't I see you over here, Christine? I've lost you. because it flipped off the page entirely, but I've now found you. So she says, I was in the back country for a few days and came back to some commentary about my leadership campaign. Anyway, I'm not going to read all of that. Let's just go straight to the video. Trouble in conservative land.
Here, Caroline Elliott here. I voted conservative my entire life. I voted for you in your own CPC leadership race. My family and friends donate to you at my encouragement. I've attended events and knocked on doors for you. Spoken up for you on social media and in my columns that you've actually posted to your own social media. I was the only candidate to publicly endorse you ahead of your leadership review vote earlier this year. So your MPs, and now you personally, celebrating my defeat in the BC Conservative leadership race is disappointing. The race is over, and it's time to unite, not divide. Because here's the thing. In that race, my team, made up of many of your own former staff, broke records not just in total dollars raised, but in the number of small donations from every corner of BC. We drove the issue set the entire time on things you're starting to notice, like property rights. We engaged thousands of people who'd never even considered voting Conservative before, who brought new levels of energy and excitement to the cause. And despite a very close loss in that race, I'm doing everything I can to continue to fight our disastrous NDP government here in BC. Because I know that politics is about addition, not subtraction. Putting the public interest ahead of personal disputes. Welcoming people in, not shutting them out. I'll keep fighting every day to bring people together for the future of my province and our country. I just hope you decide to do that too.
There you go. And just finally tonight, as I worry about ramped up military spending and the increasing risk of a world war and maybe even nuclear conflict, I just note that it was 64 years ago today that the largest nuclear bomb ever exploded in outer space was detonated. Starfish Prime, 1.4 megaton thermonuclear warhead detonated at the altitude that the International Space Station is orbiting at today. That explosion, that nuclear explosion in space, created radiation belts, man-made radiation belts that destroyed a lot of the satellites that were up there, and that radiation remained there for over 5 years. And it was a nuclear test. And then after that test, the USA, the then USSR, signed the Partial Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, leading to the Global 1967 Outer Space Treaty. In spite of all these treaties, we are clearly weaponizing space. Here's what that nuclear test in outer space looked like. Man, it's a wonder we've survived this long, isn't it? My God. When they detonated that thing, they didn't even really know what might happen. That was the case too when they detonated the first nuclear weapon as a test. There were concerns at that time that it might actually destroy the entire world. They just didn't know. But they detonated it anyway. And nothing has been the same since. See you tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern, on the flip side.
He's got a plan. It's bold and grand, taking over land, sea and sand. Canada's ours. Greenland's in the mix. The Panama Canal's just another fix. But Mars, oh Mars, you pesky red sphere, your spying drones are making it clear. It's a threat to Earth, a cosmic sin. But don't worry, folks, he'll make Mars great again. MAGA Mars, you're the 53rd state. Under Trump, your future is great. With Elon Musk and the Space Force too, we're slapping tariffs on your Martian crew. Make Mars great, yeah, make Mars ours. Wave that flag on the red rock stars. We'll impose sanctions, taxes, and fines. Martian exports know they're crossing the line. The Martians cry foul, but Trump doesn't care. He'll build a space wall floating up there. Elon's on board with rockets ablaze. The stock market's loving this Martian craze. He says, trust me, folks, I know the deal. Martian gold is ours, this plan is real. MAGA Mars, you're the 53rd state. Under Trump, your future is great. With Elon Musk and the Space Force too, we're slapping tariffs on your Martian crew. Make Mars great, yeah, make Mars ours. Wave that flag on the red rock stars. Yeah, Mars hotels with golf resorts, intergalactic trade reports, a MAGA dome where Martians bow. We've got the best Martians, Trump says now. Fake news claims the plan's absurd, but Trump tweets back, it's the final word. Martian drones not on my watch. Space Force ready to kick it up a notch. MAGA Mars, you're the 53rd state. Under Trump, your future is great. With Elon Musk and the Space Force too, we're slapping tariffs on your Martian crew. Make Mars great, yeah, make Mars ours. Wave that flag on the red rock stars. So buckle up for the Martian fight. Trump's taking over the Martian night. It's all for freedom, it's all for the win. Oh, say can you see, he'll make Mars great again. Make Mars great, yeah, make Mars ours. Wave that flag on the red rock stars. So buckle up for the Martian fight. Trump's taking over the Martian night. It's all for freedom, it's all for the win. Oh, say, can you see, he'll make Mars great again.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.